Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is our 2:30 session from Dr. Joseph Jefferson from the Southeast Missouri State University. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
A lot of words there. My name is Dr. Heidi Welch. I am the Director of Music Education at Castleton University in Castleton, Vermont, and I am here presiding as the Collegiate Chair of the Collegiate Strand, rather, of this conference, and I represent the entire Eastern Division of Collegiate students and teachers. Without further ado, I'm looking forward to this session, a guide to effectively maximize your daily practicing goals. I purposefully selected this session because I think we don't do this enough. And then I just emailed all my students. I'm like, you better get in this session right now. So without
No
further
pressure.
ado,
No.
Dr. Jefferson, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm going to share my screen now so that everyone can kind of see what's happening. So thank you all so much for allowing me to be here today. Today, we're going to discuss how to effectively maximize our daily practice and goals. Okay. Now, I love this little picture. Are you having trouble getting started? I think that is a really important topic for not only students, but also professionals as well that are in the workforce. Sometimes we just kind of get inundated with work, and it's kind of hard for us to put that time in to make sure that we're actually practicing and we're doing the things to help us get motivated. And so I really developed this topic my first year here at Southeast because I was extremely busy. And so I was used to getting these larger chunks of time so that I could practice and do all of the things that I needed to do. But I found that I didn't necessarily have those larger chunks. So I had to figure out, well, how can I make this work? So I developed this method entitled 6-20-24. And this is a way that I like to maximize my practice sessions by breaking them down. This method, if you use this method, it's been used by a lot of colleagues at a lot of different universities. I've sent it to them to use in their studios, and as well as I implement that in my own teaching in my studio, it's really helping students as well as professionals be able to organize the daily practice and to make it less daunting. So let's really be clear and let's really have an honest conversation. Sometimes it is a little difficult to get started. And when we're thinking about how much we need to accomplish, we need to figure out a better way so that we can go about accomplishing those goals. So the concept of this is simple. It was really breaking down 6 practice sessions, 20 minutes in length, for within 24 hours. Now, since we all are not up for 24 hours, I hope we're not, we're really breaking this up in our workday if we can do this, so that we can do this. Now, personally, I like to plan an hour and a half chunk of time that I can be able to get at least 3 practice sessions in. And that other half an hour, that's really putting the breaks in between each one, because I think it's extremely important. What I've gathered based off of doing this probably for the past 3 years is that my students will normally come up to me and they'll say at the end of the day, combined with ensemble rehearsals, they're getting well over 4 hours on their instrument. And I think that's the goal of every applied teacher or every teacher in general. We want our students to be practicing and we want them to be making progress. As professionals, this is extremely important as well because we want to make sure that we're still maintaining proficiency on our instruments and we're still being able to continue to grow and develop, as we know that music is a lifelong marathon that we need to continue to work on. At the bottom, I have this little snapshot that just said, do you only need 2 hours? Absolutely not. This is going to vary based off of the type of instrument that you play. As a brass player, it might be a heavy chop day or something like that. And then you really need to listen to your body. And let your body kind of tell you if you can do more, then guess what? You maintain the same principle, the same concept as you continue on to advancing and going to accomplish the goals that you desire to accomplish. So here are the 5 steps to practice success. And I think this is extremely important before we get into implementing the method. We have to understand these 5 steps. And I think this is extremely important because a lot of us that haven't been taught how to practice, or a lot of us who have been like professional gigging musicians, sometimes we kind of go through the motions. But I think it's extremely important that we maintain clear goals so that we can really make progress consistently. And that's a really big word that I like to use with my students: consistent practice and growth and development. So the first step that we'll be discussing is changing your mindset. As I stated a little bit earlier, the hardest thing for a lot of us to do is to sit down and get started. Me as a trombonist, what I like to do is when I get in the space, when I enter whatever space that I'm in and I'm about to practice, the instrument needs to be out. It's a lot easier. It's easier to get to work when you can see that instrument. It's kind of like that instrument's calling you like, hey, there's work that needs to be done. And yeah, it's not going to happen if it's in the case. So we really need to think about how much time, what we have to do, and we need to be very clear. So we got to really kind of change the mindset. The one thing that a lot of people struggle with, and myself, I struggle with this as well, is I really had to remove distractions from me when I was playing. So cell phone, we're going to talk a little bit about cell phone and how I do that. Facebook, Instagram, all of those things are fantastic, and they seem very harmless. But at times when we're trying to work and we're dealing with limited time, we really don't have time to waste. And so we want to make sure that we're maximizing our time as much as possible. Step 2, this is one that we all really need to deal with on a really personal level. We have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to really understand where we are currently, deficiencies that we have, things that need to improve, and just really be honest, just really kind of pull back the layers and say, yes, I really need to work on this. This has not gotten any better, and really kind of face those things. We really can't move forward until we really are specific and really locked in onto those goals so that we can do that. So make sure that we are honest with ourselves. I love this quote: perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence, right? So make sure that we're really honest with ourselves about where we want to go and have a plan, okay? Address the issues, don't run from them. I'm a really big proponent of that. You have to lean into these things. The third step is consistency. It's only going to work if you're doing it. You have to be diligent in your efforts. You have to be diligent in this crazy lifestyle that we've chosen to do, to be healers, to be educators, to be performers. We have to be diligent with this as we can continue to grow. So we have to be consistent in our practice, and it needs to be a fixture in our daily lives. So what I personally do is I schedule all of my practice sessions in my phone. And for me, that's extremely important because if it's in my phone, it needs to happen. I don't just put things in my calendar that don't need to happen. And as a professional, I make sure that my students are aware that this time is for me and this time is for my development, which ultimately it's going to be for you, because if I'm not properly prepared, then how can I be the best teacher for you when you come in to me? So I have to make sure that they are very clear that that time is extremely important so that I can go in and learn this. I just told my students as we prepare for juries, we have 15 in the studio now. And so as we prepare for juries, and they were talking about all the jury pieces, and I said, do you realize that I have to learn 15 pieces? They didn't think about that. They just thought about the one piece that they had to learn. I said, well, yeah, I'm learning 15 of them. So I have to be prepared for you. And in order for me to do that, I must remain consistent in how I prepare daily. Step number 4, you have to learn to rest. Okay. This is something that we wish we would have done after the fact. And so, as a trombonist, as someone who has, let's just be very clear, metal on their faces and they're dealing with pressure, you don't feel it immediately in the moment. It feels good. The next day you feel it though. Your lips are swollen. These different things. I found myself when I was younger, or when I'm really up against a deadline, when I would practice, I would maintain the instrument in my hand the entire practice session. Rather than, even if I'm just looking at a rhythm, or I'm solfeging something, or I'm listening to something, I had the instrument in my hand. I didn't realize how much stress that was actually causing a part of my body. So I put the instrument on the stand to make sure that's a part of the rest. You have to take time to do this. You have to take time to stretch. You have to take time to clear your goal, to clear your mind, and get ready for the next session. If you had a bad session, what do? Okay, you assess that. You figure out, what can I do to move forward on my next session, and then you try to fix those things the next day when you reassess. But you have to make sure that you put in time for rest. There are students that just says, oh, I need to get my 2 hours. I'm just going to knock my 2 hours all out at one time. In theory, that might sound good, but you need to think of the lasting effects of doing something like that. And the fifth step is your session goals. How many of you all, when you're practicing, have a practice journal? If you're like me, most of my stuff is on my iPad. And so I'm reading all of my music off of my iPad, but guess what? I still have this, the little $1 thing, from the little $1 composition book. And I use that as my practice journal. In the practice journal, that's no place for you to be timid or bashful in terms of what it is that you want to accomplish. You need to be specific. You need to list tempo markings, things that went good. Be kind to yourself. Sometimes when we're practicing and when we're in the trenches, we really like to talk about all the things that need to be improved. But guess what? There are things that you are doing good. So you definitely need to notate those things and really be kind to yourself as you continue on this journey. One thing that I love about having this practice journal is that before each session, you can really look back at previous goals and really refocus. And I particularly love to do this Sunday to Sunday. So Sundays are my day that I go back through my entire week and look at the progress that I've made. Oh, my articulations got a little bit faster here. That got a little bit better. This didn't really do as much. When I listened to my recordings here, I really wasn't as consistent. And so I really use Sunday to really ramp me up and get me motivated for the week. And I think that would help so many students if we thought about that and we prepared ourselves mentally for forging through this week rather than just kind of walking aimlessly into it, really having a goal. And what you're going to find by doing this is going to help you by week, by month, by year, by day, with just continuously building routine and setting great habits. And the one thing that I can say about this, all the conferences that I go to, it could be the International Trombone Festival, it could be the Jazz Education Network, throughout my day, based off of whatever it is that I'm attending, I'm making sure that I'm getting my 20s in throughout the day. Because guess what? I mean, it's really easy when you're at if we wasn't in COVID right now, it's very easy when you go to conference to just kind of be like, you go in full conference mode and then you get back from the conference 3 days later and you're like, oh, I haven't touched my instrument. What's going on? And then you got comeback chops is what I like to say. You're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out what's happening. And so you feel very awkward when that's not happening. So I really make sure that I put those things in my calendar to really help me. So let's take a look at what a sample 6/20/24 might look like. And this is very general. The one thing that I love about this is if you're studying with someone or you are a professional as well, this is you using those 5 steps to figure out what is going to help me the most get to where I need to get to. So for me, in my first session as a brass player, it's really about getting the air moving, centering, getting in the space, making sure my lips are moving. So I'm glistening, I'm doing sostenuto, slow lip flexibilities. Those are the sort of things that we do as brass players to kind of get us ready for the day. If you're a vocalist, if you're a guitarist, find out what are those things that get you kind of warmed up, ready to go in that first 20 minutes, and be really clear about that. Use that first 20 minutes to work on your intonation. If your intonation's bad, guess what? This is setting you up for the entire day. And so the reason why this first 20 minutes is critical, because how you play in the first 10 to 20 minutes of the day, in my opinion, that's going to set you up for how you're going to sound when you come to lessons or when you're going to be in your ensembles. So really be extremely really focused when you launch this day. Now, the one thing that I would put up here, and I put these little asterisks up here, put that phone on airplane mode before each session. Okay, I did not dig it, and I made this up for myself, and I hated it when I first started it, but I absolutely love it because guess what? When I'm done, it's like a little treat for me. When I'm done with the session, I can hit that button and cut airplane mode off, and then all my messages can come in. So that's like my little reward to myself and my little treat. I can take that when I'm taking my break, and then when I go back to my next session, airplane mode back on again, because I want to be extremely focused. My second session of the day is we're dealing with routine and we're dealing with maintenance. So I'm dealing with more flexibility, Brad Edwards stuff, Emery Remington stuff, Clark studies. Can I get around my instrument? And I'm working on range. I'm being very specific about those things. What am I doing to maximize the things that I need that I'm going to encounter in my stuff that are for lessons, stuff that are for upcoming gigs, stuff that are for recitals, for ensembles. I'm making sure that I'm implementing that stuff here. And again, this is what works for me. And you have to find out what works for you and what's going to be most beneficial for you. And if you don't know what works for you, this is where you speak with an applied instructor, or, if you're a brass person, you can absolutely reach out to me. I'd love to kind of help with you to kind of tailor this for you. It needs to be like a really nice suit or dress. You want it to be custom. You want it to be bespoke to you and how you want this to work. Your third session, I'm dealing with articulation. So I'm dealing with the Arbans, I'm dealing with the Koprosh, I'm dealing with the Bish, I'm dealing with scales. But the one thing that I love about this, in my scales, most of you all that play scales or do your scales daily, do you do the different articulations of those scales? Are you doing legato? Are you doing marcato? Are you doing staccato? Are you doing tenuto marcato? Why is that important? Because as soon as you get it in the music, you won't know how to vary those things. So I like to make sure that I've established the biggest toolkit that I can possibly have. So that way, when I encounter this, I can go and reach for those resources. And guess what? After that, then I do my warm down. Guess what? The first hour is done that quickly. And so I'm warmed up. I've hit all of my basics. I'm warmed up, and now I'm ready for the next set. So for me, this is my 8 a.m. routine. I'm doing this. Then I start answering emails. I start with life. Life starts doing its thing. And then I go back at 10 o'clock. Guess what? Session 4 starts for me. Again, phone goes to airplane mode. I'm doing legato playing. Since I play both sides of the horn, I'm dealing with jazz ballads. I'm dealing with technical exercises. It could be jazz transcriptions. It could be solo rep for a recital that's coming up. I'm really dealing with sections, and I was really specific when I put sections from solo rep, the sections that are giving you the most trouble. And you're going to find out why that is important right here as we move on to the fifth session. The fifth session is solo rep. So meaning based off of whatever you have coming up that needs to be performance ready, you want to really focus in on breaking or playing larger chunks. And I like to say by the page is what I would do. The fourth session, we're dealing with chunks. The fifth session, we're actually dealing with entire movements. We're just really building continuity in this point here. And again, you cater this to your needs. If you're an improviser, make sure at this point in time that you're learning tunes and that you're working through your different phrasings, that you're understanding chord structure. You're dealing with harmony. If you're dealing with 2-5-1s, tritone substitutions, all of that stuff, you make sure you're dealing with this stuff in that particular session. And your sixth session, we're already at our sixth session. Then you go and you pick two things. You can either choose to go back and attack deficiencies. And I bold printed that because I love to go back and attack those deficiencies. The things that I really did not clean up as much as I wanted to in my earlier session, I really go in and I get those things. It might be revisit methods. Orchestral excerpts, reading new materials. If you're dealing with jazz improvisation, you're dealing with that. Sight reading, playing with duets. In this sixth session, the one thing that I am always going to do, and I'm normally picking 3, but I'm telling you all you can do 2, but do what works for you. I'm always doing something where I'm attacking deficiencies. I'm doing some fun practice. Because in the quest to improve, sometimes it starts to feel like work, right? And so if we don't do something that makes us feel happy about what we're doing, I'm a dad now. So when I hear my kids listen to all these cartoons, what do I do? I learn those melodies and I take them through all the keys. So that way I'm also I'm working on scales, but I'm also working on playing those melodies when I see them. So I'm trying to do 2 things at once, and I'm listening. And notice I put mental practice there because I think that's something we don't do enough throughout our day. We don't do mental practice, and that's very valuable in our quest to continuously improve as musicians. We have to list, we have to understand stylistically what we're doing. And at the end of that, we're now at our 2 hours, right? You have done 2 hours worth of hardcore focused work and you're taking your time. As a brass player, you want to make sure that you warm down. It needs to be low and slow. And then you make sure that you're focused on the next day or the next session. For me, I'm normally getting about 9/20s a day. So I try to maintain that 3 hours a day. For me, to be a professional, I need to be able to make sure that I'm doing that. But could I survive and do what I needed to do with those 2 hours? Absolutely, I could. Now, going back, these are some notes that I really want to just share with you all. That 5th session that we talked about in terms of solo rep, I really like to push myself and I really like to push my students. That 5th session, I like to call that the recording session. The one thing that we don't do enough, I think, of musicians is record ourselves. And now with COVID, we've been really recording ourselves because that's all we have to do. And so we have to make sure that we're recording ourselves so we can take a true assessment of what's happening. If we play for one of our friends, they say, "Hey, you sound fantastic." But then when you record yourself on that Zoom recorder, and it's like, "Oh, maybe I need to do a little bit more work on that. Maybe they were a little too kind." But then you can really make a fair assessment. Make sure that we're using our metronome. Make sure that we have our utensils in the place so that we can do as much as we need to do, and find out ultimately what works for you? What are the things that you need that's going to help you improve to get you to where you need to go? So if you're auditioning for graduate programs, or you're getting ready to audition for ensembles, or you have things that you're doing in the studio, or it's summertime and you want to apply for the Disney band and all those sorts of things, you come in with a plan and you make sure that you're focused so that you can attain those things. Okay. Are there any questions about this method that anybody may have? I would love to answer them.
Any questions at all? Dr.
That many
Jefferson,
questions.
I loved everything about this. I find that it's been most difficult, especially with music education majors,
Yes.
to really find the time and the energy to practice. It becomes an afterthought because they're so focused on their music education coursework, et cetera. So, and this model seems to be, we don't do enough of this to really train our students how to practice. How do you suggest understanding the massive amount of work for our music education majors, how do you suggest really getting them to be energized to want to practice for the benefit of practice?
Sure. And to kind of lead with that, we're mostly music ed here at Southeast Missouri. So I completely understand what you're saying. And so I think developing a culture of practice, of that it's cool to do that within the studio, and then the accountability that comes along with that. When you develop that in the studio, then the students start holding one another accountable. Hey, did you go do that? And then, when it gets warmer, you start seeing them outside. They're playing duets, they're playing quartets with one another. All of that stuff adds up. So you really have to develop that culture. You really have to just really stay in it. That's what I always like to say, really just stay in it and really stay encouraging, but make it so that it is something that is easily digestible and not overwhelming for them. And it's been quite beneficial.
Keep your students engaged through COVID when it seemed like some of our students just didn't want to practice because why bother? We don't have wind ensemble, we don't have in-person, playing right now. So why bother? And then it became, an issue when it comes to juries. Like our students, some of them that are on the call right now, have juries coming up in 2 weeks. And we've definitely seen a lower quality of performance lab assignments, which is the weekly recitals, but juries as well. So how did you keep your students engaged with a quality of practice?
Absolutely. Well, my upperclassmen really have bought into this. So when the freshmen came in, they were really influential, saying, "Hey, this is how we do things here. This is what's going to keep you." I also assign quartets in the studio. I assign duos in the studio. So there's a level of accountability. Here in Missouri, we didn't really stop. So we've had over 160 performances on campus still. And so it's, we've been social distancing and they've been wearing masks, and the students have just been absolutely amazing because they've been doing all of those things because they still wanted to create. So of course we haven't been having the large ensembles, but chamber music has been extremely huge. And again, that's that accountability. You don't have somebody else on your stand playing their part with you. If you don't have your part together, it's going to be quite obvious. And so the students have just done a fantastic job of just kind of motivating, and faculty have been providing an example for them. And so we're just very thankful that they have really pushed through. Are they tired? Absolutely. Are faculty tired? Yes, we all are tired, but we're very thankful that they've been able to do that. And if anyone has any questions or think of anything a little bit later, reach out on my website, josephlJefferson.com. I actually have this packet there under my pedagogy link that you can download for yourself. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me up there. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on all those different platforms. But it's been lovely to just be able to share with you all. And I hope this has been helpful to someone on this call.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jefferson. This is one that I don't, as I said many times so far, I don't think we do enough with our collegiates And I'm so thankful that you put this presentation forward.